What's up guys? It's another fly-in day, which means I have a lot to get done today, so let's get straight into it. So my first stop today is my mate Adam's house. We're picking up some coilovers for the S13, and he's also chucking in a whole bunch of other cool stuff as well while I'm there. I've just finished up at Adam's house, picked up the coilovers. Now on to stop number 2. We are heading to Brainwash Drift Club HQ, or better known as the Sangwan Sanctuary. First stop was to Adam's house, and we picked up these HSD coilovers. So they are supposedly in good working condition, which are going to be perfect for the missile S13. First thing we're going to do is obviously take them apart, clean up all the shreds, because that is like the biggest pain in the ass when these don't slide smoothly, because you know there's heaps of dirt and sand in it, which these ones have. Okay, the second one, these are GTR tie rods and tie rod ends. So, we have some S15 LCAs, some cast rods, S13 ones. So these will be going on the C-Lady, which is going to cop the fuck knuckles, just because I don't have time to get some bent ones. The S15 LCAs, we're going to pop the S15 ball shank out of it, and we're going to pop an S13 one in it, and then they can go into the S13 again. We got some camber tops obviously for the coilovers. We've got some S15 hubs. We got some bushes, which we don't need, but they are also spares. S15 knuckles, again, don't need, but they could be used in the future. S13 sway bar could be good for the sway bar mod. What I'm most excited about though is these fuck knuckles, so let's go check them out. So the time has come to say goodbye to my big lock kit. I feel like I've pushed this kit as far as I can, and it is now limiting the style and the techniques that I want to use to drive. The answer is going to be obviously a cut and shut setup, just due to its simplicity. It is still going to be a huge trial and error kind of situation, so I'm not 100% sure I'm going to get the results I'm chasing, but this is a step in the right direction. We're going to keep the kit for now, just in case I do need to swap back to it, but I'm very excited by these. I've seen a lot of people driving the exact same technique and style that I want to with this setup, so then it's just going to come down to my driver skill level. Now, some will notice that this is a modified version of the famous B-knuckle. Obviously a very nice and tidy example of it. There's been a slight modification to these. Some will also argue that the LCAs do not require such a large notch. However, the only reason for this is because the rack in the 180 is moved forward as far as possible. Because of how far the steering rack is moved forward, it's going to be the limiting factor of how much caster we can run due to how much the knuckle needs to pivot inside the LCA in order to achieve the desired amount of lock. Obviously we can adjust it out with this little lock stop here. So we got the knuckles and the LCAs sorted, we got the tie rods and rod ends sorted. The last thing we need to do is the caster arms. Now I went against getting bent caster arms just for the time being because I want to see how I go with this straight pair of caster arms I had lying around. However, one of my mates taught me a good little old school hack that will get that smidge more clearance with the straight caster arms. So these are the caster arms I picked up the other night. Obviously straight, no bend, the rim will hit the caster arm at some point. Now, what you can do is you can space these over, so that one end will go across like that and that'll shift the arm. You can buy aftermarket ones, but what I'm gonna do, and there's apparently a real old school little hack, is that you cut it just along that edge there. So you use basically this distance as a spacer, and then this little end still sits in there like that, so it doesn't butt up against the rose joint in there. So that'll be a good little tip, and obviously I had these lying around so they don't cost anything. Obviously, as we develop the car a bit further, we will probably go to some big aggressive bent style if we need to. I've been told I don't need to, so it's going to be really interesting to see if we can get enough lock to do the backwards entry with straight caster arms. So that's sort of our finished product. As you can see just here, there is a little spacer in there, so that stops it from butting up against the rose joint. And this is now our offset spacer. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how much lock we do get. So now it's time to install the Brainwash DC buck knuckles. Fortunately, you're going to have to pinch these GTR ends off the S13, and we're going to have to use them in the SIL80 today. And I also found this pulling apart the Acostal. As you can see, there is quite a big bow in this shank, which was on the tie rod side, which pretty much is the reason why I was driving like a bitch, because I felt this major shake in the steering and it was consistently throwing me off. So that can now join the wall of broken parts. So that is your fuck knuckles installed. Take one good hard look at how clean and pretty they look, because after a couple of track days they are going to be destroyed. It's kind of sad really. This janky ass caster arm lets it down a fair bit. Just got to put the hub and the rotor back on, brakes back on, tighten it all up, and then we'll just do a quick tow align, and then we should be going to get a wheel alignment sometime later today. So we finished up installing the fuck knuckles and we've got everything basically eyeballed aligned. I was supposed to go get a wheel alignment, but I just totally ran out of time. So let's go have a look at what we've achieved with a stock LCA, a factory knuckle, and some straight caster arms. We've pulled the caster as far forward as possible, just to basically keep the steering rack in line with the tie rods when it's straight. Unfortunately, this rack has moved really far forward, so that's going to be a huge limiting factor in how much lock I can run. I can obviously push the wheel further back, and that will give us more lock, because as we pull further back this way, knuckle is allowed to rotate further because we've got plenty of clearance just in here, but that is just keeping it straight on the steering rack for now. So this is just the first mock-up. I'll have a bit of a play with it once I get the wheels on, see where the wheels want to fit inside the guards. So this is another thing these big lock kits don't tell you. As you can see here, the tyre scrub, this is basically from my excessive wheel lean on really aggressive entries. So the wheel is leaning over to just the point where it's putting so much pressure on this part of the tyre. And as you can see, this tyre's still got a hell of a lot left, even for a soft compound. That's just one of the negative effects of running a big LCA extended lock kit. So that's what I'd call the happy point of the setup. Yeah, that steering rack is unfortunately affecting it, but whether we need a little bit more lock than that, I'm not sure yet. I think we'll just have to drive it and see how it all feels. As you can see, it sort of sits neutral in the wheel arch, which means we've got plenty of clearance either side. I have been told I need to pull the caster back a little bit more just to get a smidge more lock out of it, and we probably could dial in a bit more camber. The camber tops I have in there being offset aren't exactly the greatest for this setup because it's no longer a pot using a super long LCA, so that's sort of like a bit of a downfall. So we've got them on max camber, and we've also got it on max camber at the knuckle. So in the future we might elongate the little hole in the knuckle. You can't see shit. So we've got clearance sorted. We probably could space it out a little bit more, but I'm just gonna run this as a super basic setup for now and adjust after. So that's where we're gonna wrap this video up, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'm super excited to test these fuck knuckles out and go back to a cut and shut setup. So if you guys are interested, hit up the boys from Brainwash Drift Club. They are the ones who made the knuckles. I will keep you guys updated on how everything goes with the new fuck knuckle setup. And if they do have the desired outcome that I'm looking for with that extra little bit of stability on my big entries, I will keep you updated and do a comparison between the Akostal and the fuck knuckle setup, just so you guys can completely understand exactly where I'm coming from and we can break it down a little bit further. But until then,